doesn't matter. Dream of dust or dream of light. In a universe.
There and Back can create the route for you. Finally, by signing up to There and Back, you are able to save your favorite routes. I'll now pass you on to Jed, who will run you through the website.
Thank you very much, Andrew. So I'm now going to run through the typical flow for a user when using There and Back. So as you can see, the first thing they're doing is logging in. And then they'll be using our main functionality, which is creating a round route. So they've started from Makers Academy, and the approximate length will be about 5 kilometers. You can see the direction box in the top right-hand corner. And when they click this randomize button, it automatically creates a new route for them. They can then save their routes, like this guy's doing here, lunchtime stroll. And as well as round trips, you can also create routes with an end trip, with an endpoint. So this trip will be going from Makers Academy to Hyde Park, and then click generate and the route generates. So as before, you've got a directions box in the top right-hand corner. And when they hover over each instruction, a blue circle will appear on the route and will show them where on the route that instruction applies to. Another piece of functionality we've added in is the use of My Location. So now our user is creating a 10-kilometer cycling trip from their location. So as before, the route generates, and also you can use randomize here as well to create new routes. An additional piece of functionality is you can move each individual marker to make edits to your route. So as we could see here, the user is lengthening their route slightly, and that reflects in the direction box on the top right-hand corner. So they've saved the route, and in order to view my routes, you click My Routes, and here you can view each of your saved routes, have a look at them, make changes to them, and also, lastly, you can delete your saved routes as well. I'm now going to pass you on to Joffy, who will talk about our tech stack, as well as how we work as a team.
Thank you, Jed. We used React on our front end and Bootstrap for styling. We needed a lightweight backend, so we decided to go for Firebase, Firestore as our database to store the routes, and Firebase authentication to sign up, login, and manage user sessions. Our testing framework is Cypress for feature testing and end-to-end testing, and we use the Istanbul code coverage tool for JavaScript. We are displaying the map using a JavaScript mapping tool called Leaflet, and we are also relying on several web mapping APIs in our application for route planning, displaying the routes, and converting the user input to geographic coordinates. Now moving on to how we worked as a team. During these 2 weeks, our team followed an agile development process with regular sprints. As a team of only 4, we had to make sure we worked efficiently throughout in order to complete our goals. We split into 2 pairs on a daily basis, but made sure we kept in regular contact by having 3 meetings every day to update each other and reflect on our team's process. Our key team principles were always try to prioritize learning and knowledge sharing, clear communication, and being respectful and nice to each other. And now I'm going to pass you on to Ed, who will talk about the challenges we faced and what went well during the project.
Thank you, Zofi. So first and foremost, as a team, we made a big learning curve in the last 2 weeks by not only learning how to work with APIs, React, test with Cypress, use Firebase for our backend, but function and adapt well as a team. To point out a few things we found hard as a team. Well, firstly, we used a Leaflet plugin called Leaflet Routing Machine. This was the source of our early difficulties, as there were hardly any other examples online of others using it. We also struggled at points balancing all the APIs, as certain points we've been making many calls to different APIs just to complete one action. Towards the end, our team split into front-end and back-end teams, which meant we got more done. However, this did mean there was a knowledge split within a team. And lastly, things that we did well as a team. We functioned smoothly as a team and all got on really well. We estimated and timed the project well, completed all the features we initially set out to, and created a product that matched our initial mock-ups. And most importantly, had a great 2 weeks learning new things and enjoyed coding and pairing. I want to give a big shout out to Andrew, Jed, and Sophia for outstanding 2 weeks, and to all April 2020 cohort and coaches for a great 12 weeks. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you, Jays. This is a product that I personally love to start using, as I found myself following the same boring running route because I know exactly where I need to turn around to end up back at home at the 5 kilometer point. I find it really demotivating to get back to my house, look at my phone, and realize I've actually only done 4.8 kilometers, and then I have to do a couple laps around my building, which is quite boring, before my phone finally tells me that I've gotten to 5 kilometers. So I'm really excited to try out their product to find running routes near me for any distance that I want to run. The second team that we have coming up is called Chronomy, and they have something really quite cool to show off.
Thank you, Tatiana. So yeah, as you said, we're Chronomy. There's a team of 5, me, Asif, Marius, Will, and Patrick. So basically, Chronomy is, so first of all, TikTok is, as I'm sure you're aware, the most popular app at the moment amongst the youth of today. But not all of the content is suitable for some of the younger age groups. So Chronomy is a web-based application which allows users to create TikTok playlists and play those TikToks separate from the official website. So we designed this product so that parents can have a better control over what content their kids are seeing. So for the tech stack, we decided to split the front end and back end into 2 separate entities. We use React for the front end to allow a seamless user interface, and Jest and Cypress for the testing. For the back end, we use Rails and RSpec. Rails allowed us to build a solid base to interact with the TikTok APIs and send the appropriate JSON to the front end. And then we deployed the back end on Heroku and the front end on Surge. Obviously, all our work was committed step by step on GitHub as well. So we obviously encountered a few challenges along the way. One of which was making sure we had, good test coverage across both the front end and the back end. Mocking the API front end and testing the back end controllers were 2 areas we found particularly difficult. We got there in the end, and we were looking at around 80% test coverage across both. Another challenge was getting the TikTok API to produce just the link for the MP4 instead of all the other features that come along with it. So we had to resort to using a different third-party API for just the video, but we then didn't have the title of the video. So in the end, we combined both the official TikTok API and the third-party one to produce the MP4 along with just the title and the hashtags. So I'm just going to pass on to Asif, who will discuss what went well.
Thanks for that, Alice. Despite the challenges, there were lots of things which went well. We had a clear idea of the functionality for the app from the beginning, which helped us spend more time on planning the actual logistics.
Muted, Asif.
Am I still muted? No. Am I?
We can hear you.
Yeah. Anyway, we had a clear idea of the functionality for the app from the beginning, which helped us spend more time on planning the actual logistics of the project. Deployment of the front end and the back end was seamless due to the nature of us splitting them up into 2 completely separate entities. We achieved the MVP by the deadline in week 1, which gave us time to really concentrate on other things. Ultimately, we completed all the functionality that we had planned. I'm now going to pass to Patrick.
I'm going to talk through the timeline that we had for the project. So we started on the Monday with the mock-ups and deciding what stack we were going to use. For our MVP, because we didn't have very long, we focused purely on React front end, which made API calls to the TikTok directly. To the TikTok API directly. However, in the end, it went via the back end. And then we focused on getting our back end just sending out fake API responses, got the back end sign up functionality working. And then we got our front end to communicate with the back end, fake API responses, and then basically got the full playlist functionality working. All the playlists have full CRUD ability, so you can destroy and edit them. And then we tied the front end and the back end together properly and spent time on CSS and trying to get our TikTok viewer to look good on a phone. And now I shall pass over to Will, who will demo the product.
So in order to ensure this demo runs completely flawlessly, I'm going to hand over to past Will, who prepared this for us earlier.
Thanks, Future Will. So here is a demo of the Chronomy app. We've actually deployed it to a custom domain, chronomy.net. And one of the main features of the app is that it allows a parent to basically curate the content that their child sees. And obviously, people have different ideas of what is suitable for their own children. So one of the features is that when you go to the website, you don't actually see anything other than a sign-in page, which is for the parent to sign in for. So if I sign in with my username and password, you can see that I don't have anything set up yet. So I'm going to add a playlist and I'm going to call it Dance Challenges. And then I need to add my TikToks to the list. I actually have a handy list of TikToks right here. And you can see that there are different formats of TikTok links, but our app will accept all of them. So this is what you'd get just from the TikTok website. So I can add that one. This is what you'd get if you use the share in the actual TikTok app itself. So I can add that one. This is kind of the long convoluted one, which is another kind of share link. Again, our app will handle that fine. And then finally, this is just a regular one. So I'm going to add that in as well. So now we've added 4 TikToks, so I'm going to click to save. And what that does now is it queries the TikTok API, gets the titles, gets the video files, and then compiles our playlist for us. And what we're doing to ensure that people can't browse each other's playlists is you have this long UUID link. So this is basically the identifier for our TikTok link. And we've handily made it shareable via a copy to clipboard. So if I copy that, go to another browser window and paste that in there, you can see that basically what it's done is pasted in that really long link. And if I go to that, you can see that it loads in the browser and it auto plays. But one of the main things about TikTok is it's mobile first. So I'm going to throw over to Will in the studio, who's now going to demo it on a mobile device.
Thanks, Will. So as you can see, our TikTok auto plays in the browser. We can turn the sound on by clicking in the top corner here. You can also see that when it gets to the end of the video, it will also loop. So there's the loop. And if you want to browse through the list of TikToks that have been assigned to you, you can press the down arrow here, loads the next video with sound and auto playing and looping. Next video. Next video. And finally looping back to the beginning. Let's turn the sound off. If you want to play or pause the video, you just click in the middle. There we've got play. Resume the video. And if you're also more used to Instagram stories with the left and right to advance through your videos, there's also a hidden function. So if you hit on this side, again, it will progress through the list. If you want to go back, just hit the other side. And there we go. That is our TikTok viewer. Back to you, Will.
Thanks, Will. Great demo. Back to you, Future Will.
Thanks, past Will. So that's kind of our project. So it's live on chronomy.net. It can be used, it's fully functional. I guess the only thing to mention is that one of our team members couldn't be here today, which is Marius, and he was kind of our testing champion. And he ensured that all of our test coverage was up to date, so we just want to thank him as well. And that is Chronomy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chronomy. This is such a useful product. There's lots of great material out on the internet, but also lots of things that aren't appropriate for kids. So your product really solves this problem. I was also really amazed to watch how your front end and your back end came together so seamlessly, because it shows such a great iterative development process. As a reminder to the audience, you can submit questions to the Makers team through the Q&A feature of the webinar, and we'll be answering these questions after the project presentations. Now, on to our next team. Please give a warm welcome to the next team, Great Supine Protoplasmic Invertebrate Jellies.
Okay, we ready? Can you hear me? Cool. All right, hello everyone. We are the Great Supine Protoplasmic Invertebrate Jellies. For our final project, we decided to do a game related to the current COVID situation. Initially, the plan was to do an informative game for children so that they could learn the guidelines around COVID. However, we couldn't really help ourselves, and as the days went on, it started to lean more and more towards a bit of satire and just a bit of fun. The game could be described as a Super Mario clone, only better, if you ask us. For the project's tech stack, we used and included JavaScript, Node, React, and we used Jest for our testing, Netlify for deployment, and Travis CI for continuous integration. You can have a go at the game yourself by following the link at the bottom of the page. Everything we will be talking about in this presentation has been documented in our wonderfully organized project wiki, which can be found on the About Us page on the site. Lizzie will now talk to you about the planning we did and how we managed the project. Lizzie?
Thanks, Ed. So prior to this project, none of us had any experience of coding a game. Therefore, we felt that using an agile working environment was vital to ensure we structured our time well. The team kept to a routine of morning stand-ups to discuss our daily objectives, pair programming throughout the day, and 5 p.m. retros where we would share knowledge and reflect on our work. Trello was a highly useful tool that enabled us to break down the project into more manageable segments. As our code streams would often interlink, this facilitated a far more organized way to separate the workload and helped monitor our productivity. Planning the project itself helped us envision the game, hone in on a narrative, and gave us more confidence on where to start. Mockups and domain models were just some of the diagrams we made. Now on to Gareth, who will talk about our MVC structure.
Cool, thanks Lizzie. So for our design pattern, we went with the model view controller, and this was to separate the responsibilities of our game in a clear and organized way. Yep, so for our view, we added objects to the stage that the player can see, such as the Boris character, the pedestrians, the platform and the backgrounds, and this is all handled in our index and game files. Yep, so for our controller, this handles collision and key presses. So if the player was to press the up arrow key, that tells the controller to tell Boris to jump. And if the controller detects a collision between Boris and a platform, then Boris has to stop falling. So all elements you see on the screen are separated into their own models. So each model has a list of attributes that determine their behavior. So for example, Boris has a speed attribute to determine how fast he moves, and the platforms have size and position attributes to determine how they are placed on the screen. And these attributes get changed depending on the controller action, as mentioned previously. So with that out of the way, I'll pass you over to Joe, who will now present a small demo of our game.
Thanks, Gareth. So I'll take you through the game now. So this is our website for Run Boris Run. We have a homepage where you can see the inspiration for the game, some instructions around it, and give you a taste of what it looks like, which is a sort of clone of Super Mario with a social distancing twist. We also have a controls page where it explains how to move the character, and a small About Us page with links to our other projects and the actual repo of the code itself. So taking you through the features, our character can run left and right and up, jump, sorry. We're also able to mute and unmute the game and pause and unpause. As you can see, there's characters randomly spawning and you have to avoid them. Alongside this, we have randomly spawning platforms. And when the Boris character hits the passerby, the infection rating increases, which you can see in the left-hand corner. Notice that the passerby has increased in speed and multiplies. This indicates a new level. And here you can see that I can't say now, collision detection for the character. One way of going back into quarantine is falling into a pit. And the other way is to lose the game is by running into characters. If you notice in the left-hand side, your infection rating goes up. And when you hit one, as per government guidelines, you are now quarantined. So on the next page, I'll just mention a few other features because I can't speak quick enough to do it over the video. As you notice, the background moves as the character moves. And on top of that, the randomly spawning platforms and, well, the sort of pits that come with that have floating platforms initiated if the character can't jump across them. Yeah, so I'll pass over to Colin now.
Thank you, Jo. So we faced a couple of challenges during the project, and one of them was that we initially started the project looking to use JavaScript in conjunction with the Phaser game framework. We felt that this would enable us to deliver a high-quality game very quickly. One of the requirements of the project, though, and a cornerstone of the curriculum here at Makers, was that we needed to be able to test drive the development of our code, or rather, write tests that would help us justify every line of code we wrote when writing the game itself. By the end of day one, it had become quite apparent that test-driven development, or TDD, wasn't really done for games at all. And by the end of day two, despite Phaser's clear strengths in the gaming world, the lack of documentation around the framework, and in particular testing, meant that it was very unlikely that we'd be able to write satisfactory tests and produce a game at the same time. For this reason, we had to stop working with Phaser and start writing the game again, this time using first principle and JavaScript alone. The reality is that it wasn't actually possible for us to learn how to write a game, implement our own collision detection, physics, and test drive everything before doing so. But the wealth of standards-based APIs and documentation already available enabled us to start breaking things down into clearly definable chunks. One area that gave us some concern initially was audio. These concerns were short-lived though, and once we got going, we found it very straightforward to utilize the HTML audio elements API already built into HTML5. This enabled us to build on the light-hearted nature of the game, take a traditional approach to the in-game music, and bring our character to life as you already heard through topical soundbites. Using the standards-based approach enabled us to build on our learning, test drive our sound effects class, whilst triggering, muting, pausing, and manipulating the in-game audio elements, whilst remaining faithful to the MVC model already described by Gareth. So, our project had some challenges, but once we got going, we were able to overcome these and we started to pick up pace, something that Hero is able to talk more about now.
Thanks, Colin. I'll end our presentation on a positive note by talking about what we feel went well. And firstly, we feel our biggest accomplishment was coding the complex game logic like animation and collision detection ourselves from scratch. It was definitely a steep learning curve to begin with, but we got there and we're really proud of what we accomplished. And secondly, we learned not to be too precious about code. You can always delete it and start again, and that's absolutely fine. Having clear responsibilities that were shared across the group was also something we feel we did well, and it meant that everyone felt they had contributed to the project. And finally, good morale. We came across quite a few challenges, but we kept each other in high spirits and we had a lot of fun. Thank you for listening, and you can use the link on screen to play for yourself.
Thank you to the great supine protoplasmic invertebrate jellies. Given me quite a mouthful for a team name, but I love it. It's been really inspiring to watch you along the journey for the project. I remember just about last Monday, we had a check-in and you were talking about using this framework Phaser that seemed to do a bunch of things for you. And then a few days later, you realized that relying on the framework wouldn't actually help you achieve all of the goals. And you chose to move away from this framework, and that allowed you to control all the aspects of your project and achieve a high technical quality. I think it's amazing. I think it's absolutely astonishing that you've built the physics of the game yourselves in just 2 weeks. That's really cool. So now on to our final team for tonight, whose project is inspired by a heartwarming cause. I can't wait for you to hear all about it. A warm welcome to the Kappa team.
Is everyone here? I think so. Welcome. We are Kappa team and we worked on a charity-based project. We are Joe, Maria, Tanil, Dec, Paula and myself, Katrina. Now I'm going to hand over to Joe, who is going to explain more about the project.
Thanks, Kat. Re-Engage is a UK-wide charity that organises tea parties for elderly members in the community in an effort to reduce loneliness and isolation. Each month, a driver from a group of volunteers is matched with an elderly guest in their local area who will pick up and drop off their assigned guests to and from the tea parties. The problem? I'm a volunteer and I've organised the tea parties for the last year. The problem I have faced is that the driver-guest pairings are often different each month based on the members' changing schedules. This is done manually using spreadsheets, dropping pins on Google Maps and using best judgment to work out the pairings. It can take a lot of time, so we wanted to address this with a real-world solution. The solution? Our team have built a portal that will help with the organisation by keeping all of the member data in one central place and generating the pairings based on distance and availability. The aim of the app was to automate the pairings so that the tea parties can be organised as efficiently as possible. It was really exciting to build something that can help the tea parties in the future. And I'll now pass you back to Kat, who will give you a demo of our app.
Thanks, Joe. So when we've deployed our app on Heroku, and when we arrive on the page, first thing we have to do is sign in. This is to keep the data secure. So once we've logged in, I'll be now in the portal and I can see the availabilities. But first I'm going to the contact tab. And this is where I can see all the contacts of the guests and the drivers, where I can also add a new guest or driver, which is what I'm doing now. Although we're only adding postcodes, you can actually put in a full address and it will know what it needs to do. And of course, when adding on the drop down, I can choose whether it's driver or guest. This case it's guest. Back onto the home tab. As before I can do any generation, I need to update the availabilities. In this case, I know for July, they are all available. So they're going to all be updated to true. And as you can see, as we do the change, they turn to green, which makes it very quick to see who is and who isn't available. And now on to the pairing tab. And the first thing I'm going to do is select the month. And as I already mentioned, it will be July. So on the drop down, I select July. Then I'm going to select which algorithm I want. Shortest is a very fast algorithm that produces decent but not great results. Average is a slow algorithm that always produces good results. Smart is a fast algorithm that uses a learning heuristic to often produce good results as well, but is better for larger sets of guests and drivers. For this demo, I'm going to be using average. So I select average, then I select generate, and the routes will appear on the map at the bottom of the screen, and I can adjust the map accordingly so that I can see all the routes on the screen. You'll notice there's little symbols in the pointers. The home symbol means the guest, and the car symbol means the driver. You can also see the names of the drivers, the guests, the contact guest telephone number, as the guests do not have email, and the distance they will have to travel. And as I'm finished, I'm going to log out. And now I'm going to hand over to Paula, who's going to do our tech stack.
Thank you, Kat. So before we started any work, we all agreed in using JavaScript for our project, as it's one of the most in-demand skills at the moment. So we used a MERN stack. It's a JavaScript stack, and so it's a combination of these 4 technologies. So MongoDB is a database that enabled us to store persistent user data. Express is a web framework for Node.js and also enables communications between the browser and the server. React is an open source JavaScript library that's used for building user interfaces and allows the browser to be interactive and update without refreshing. And Node.js is a JavaScript server environment. So our testing framework, we use Jest, which is a JavaScript test runner for our units of code like functions and modules, and Cypress for our front end. One of the challenges we faced was using Google Maps API, but I'm going to pass on to Tanul, who can explain our biggest challenge in detail. Thank you.
Thanks, Paula. It was amazing. For the challenges we faced, at the very beginning, Node.js and React was totally new for some team members, but it didn't take long time to figure it out for them. We really care the test coverage in our project, especially mocking the data inside the Jest and Cypress was our second challenge. If I mention about the Google Maps, the challenging part was understanding how we receive the data and using it, and the algorithm. I think this is the biggest part we were challenging in this project. Before the project, on the left of the screen, coordinator was using her judgment to decide the route that shows 8 km or 5 mile average distance. It looks convenient, right? But if we look at the right of the if we look at the right of the screen now, we did this by generating heuristic algorithm which uses artificial intelligence and mathematical optimization, and it reduces the average distance to 5 to 5 km or 3 to 4 mile automatically. Now our system 30% faster, safer, more reliable, and it's just one click away. For the teamwork part, I will pass on you, Maria.
So we only had 10 days to deliver the product, and we managed to do it in time. And I think that's partly because we had good emotional and organizational management. So from an emotional point of view, there was a lot of learning, like a steep learning curve, not to mention debugging, which could just be really exhausting and just extremely frustrating. But because as a team, we were having a lot of fun, we managed to just sort of forget about those really difficult moments. And that kept us really engaged and sustained us going forward. From an organizational point of view, so we took an agile approach to delivering our product. So in the real world, this means you would allocate a set amount of tasks over a 2-week sprint, and you would assign new tasks every 2 weeks, reflecting on how the last 2 weeks went. But because we only had 10 days to deliver, our task allocations were done over 2-day cycles, and we kept track of what was being completed using Trello. In terms of team communication and organization, we had twice daily meetings to agree tasks and discuss progress made. And crucially, we never assumed what someone might be working on. We always checked with each other. And this was especially true when we finished tasks sooner than expected. And finally, to make sure everyone felt comfortable with different parts of the code, we shared what we worked on in our afternoon retro meetings. And now I'm going to pass over to Dek, who's going to talk about what we learned.
Thanks, Maria. A big thing working remotely over the last 16 weeks was that it's much more difficult to share knowledge. And especially working on a project like this entirely over Zoom was quite hard. So that's a big thing that we had to learn. And I think for this last project at Makers, we really sort of mastered that. And we did that by having a sort of central wiki where we collated sort of all the information we were working with. And we also would have multiple Zoom chats going that we kept in a single Slack chat so that we could drop in on each other at any point and just share knowledge and know what was going on. Another big thing we had to learn was React, which for some people in our group, but they'd never used before, and for others had used for a week maybe. And so we had a huge number of React components. We used stateless and stateful React components. And we had to pass around a lot of information as well as integrating that with the Google Maps API. I think another big learning for everyone was the communication between the back end and the front end of our app. A big part of that was, again, integrating that with the Google Maps API. For example, our backend uses the directions part of the Google Maps API, formats that data as JSON, and then simply returns like an API route endpoint. So it's completely front-end agnostic. And then our front end was working again with Google Maps, but this time the Google Maps renderer. And so that could use those API endpoints for our backend. And I think that was a big thing that we learned, is structuring our web app in that kind of modern contemporary way with async requests and everything. Yeah, so we learned a lot. And now I'm going to pass back to Kat, who's going to sign off for our team. Thank you.
Thanks, Dick. We all really enjoyed working on this app, and we know it will make the coordinators' lives easier. A real pleasure to work on such a project. Thanks, everyone, and that's all from Kappa Team.
Thank you, Kappa Team. Thanks for building this useful product for such a great cause. And thank you for sharing your experience and your learnings with all of us today. I'm really proud of what you've achieved in just 2 weeks, and I'm sure it'll make a real difference to re-engage. In general, for the entire April 2020 cohort, a huge congratulations to all of you on your amazing projects. You should be really proud of the challenges you've taken on and overcome during the entire bootcamp, especially the last 2 weeks, learning new technologies while building a product that you are managing yourselves. I've seen all of you grow, both your technical and your team working skills as developers. So a huge virtual round of applause to all of you. Finally, I want to say thank you to the family and friends for tuning in tonight. I hope you've enjoyed the presentations, and I hope you all have a great weekend. I'm now going to hand over to Haley for a 30-minute Q&A to answer the questions that have been submitted via the Q&A feature. Thanks, everyone.
Cool, thanks so much, Tatiana, and well done to the April 2020 cohort. It's always great to see the different projects that come out every month. There's always such a kind of wide range of projects, so congratulations on finishing those, and good luck with starting the job hunt. So for all of you who are joining us for the next section, we're going to be joined by a couple of the makers staff who can help answer your questions if you're looking at maybe studying with us, or if you've looked at a couple of different boot camps and you're trying to figure out, you know, what do we have to offer and what do we do slightly differently from some of the other ones that you've seen. So I'm going to be joined by, I believe, Alice, who's our head of coaching, is on the call. Alice, if you're there, if you'd like to jump on with me. Hi.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
So Alice, she heads up our coaching team, so she can answer anything about the slightly more technical side, or if you're looking to know more about the curriculum, direct your questions to her. And we're also going to be joined by Joe, who's one of the course managers. So if you've got any questions about admissions, or, you know, kind of working out if you're at the right level to apply, I think he's just finishing something up, and then he'll be...
I'm here.
Okay, amazing.
Hey. Hi, everyone.
Just stalling for you there. Cool, lovely. So I think we've had a couple of questions come in already. So I'll jump straight to those and see who's the best person to answer them. Cool, so first up, we have a question asking, were the teams, also got a well done to the teams, where is it? Okay, were the teams able to form groups depending on their learning goals and interests, or are groups assigned? Alice, could you tell us a little bit about how it works, please?
Sure. So what we do for final projects, and there are 3 team projects throughout the course, and they're all chosen a little bit different. The first 2 are basically assigned by the coaches, but then final projects, there's a session before final project, the week before final project, where everyone in the cohort talks a little bit about what they're interested in. It's usually more about what kind of product they're interested in, or what kind of themes or problems they want to solve, and then we use that to put them into groups. So they would get a first choice, second choice among a list of like themes they'd like to work on, and in that form they can usually also say a few things about tech stack. and we try and make teams along along that. Also keeping in mind that we want actual teams, like we want maybe 4 to 6 people. We will all want people to be 2 in a team or something like that. So yeah, that's how we form teams for final project.
Cool, thanks Alice. So we've got the next question from Kazi asking that does Makers help teach the different platforms that the students used to make these apps and games, or did the students already have knowledge of those platforms? So I guess I'm asking a little bit about the levels that they're at. You know.
Yeah, it's neither. Interestingly, I would say that. Wait, no, sorry. Okay, I guess I need to have to go to answers. I wanted to keep the text of the question.
Move it back for you.
Sorry. No, it's okay. I found it. Right, so I wouldn't say that Makers help teaching the different platforms, because we don't provide specific learning material around those platforms. So we cover Ruby and JavaScript, and a lot of the teams there have used JavaScript. But then what we do is we help them learn by themselves those platforms, and so a lot of the technologies they will have used tonight are things that they've taught themselves based on the fundamentals that we've covered at the start of the course. And that's true for most of the week, most of the team work. With teamwork, we give them a goal, we support them, but then they are responsible for seeking out resources and make learning plans. And really the reason why we do this is so that when they are in a company, they will be independent to learn the things they need to learn in the job, because as a dev, you don't usually get a job using the technologies that you've learned before. You usually get a job and then you have to learn a lot of things on the job, and companies will look for people who are independent and who will be able to catch up. So that's what we do. So it's neither that Makers has taught them this platform, but also it's not that they had already knowledge of those platforms. They built the knowledge themselves during those weeks.
That's great, thank you, Alice. So we've got the next question from Joe, which I'm going to pass to you, Joe, asking, any idea when in-person teaching will be back?
Thanks, Joe. Good name. It's a conversation we're having all the time. It's quite a difficult one, as I'm sure you all know. It's quite hard to be certain in these times. So because of that, we're just sort of taking it month by month and seeing what the next 1 to 3 months looks like. So what are we going to do with that cohort? I think as a sort of rough prediction, there might be some sort of going back around November time. I think it's important to note that it will be quite a different place, I think, maybe to what it was before for a little while. We have a large focus on pairing and group projects and things like that, and with social distancing involved, they may have to sort of be rethought a little. It won't for sure be going back to exactly how it was for maybe a little while longer than that. So yeah.
Cool, thanks, Joe. Yeah, I think as probably with every company, you know, we're trying to just do the safest thing possible and just, yeah, play it by ear. But updates tend to be in the newsletter as well about those kind of things. So if you're not subscribed, you can subscribe to that on the main Makers, just kind of on our front landing page. And that's where most of our kind of updates about that kind of thing will be sent. Okay, so the next question we have is about the kind of class style. So they're asking, are lectures are lectures a large part of studying, or is the work more practical?
Cool, so I'm happy to take that. Lectures are not a large part of what we do. I would even say that, I mean, I guess it depends what you mean by a lecture, but there is very, very, very little learning that happens because a coach presents a topic and just talks about that topic. And that's because we believe that that's not the most efficient way to learn. It's not necessarily the most engaging way to learn. And then people learn at different rhythms, and people just understand, people are at a different level, and they may understand one concept a lot quicker, and one concept maybe they need a bit more time and a bit more practice. So most of what we do is around learning by doing. So there's practical, which are like exercises. There are workshops from time to time, which are led by coaches, but the coaches will mostly give an introduction and then give some kind of exercise to work on, and devs will work on that exercise, and then they'll come back and there will be some kind of Q&A. There are also moments when coaches are in touch with students or devs by helping them figure out how to find a solution to their problems, or helping them, giving them pointers to debug something maybe, or helping them create a plan for their own learning. So there's communication with the coaches, but I would say it's very rarely the case that the way you learn is that you're sitting there and you're waiting for a coach to transfer the knowledge. Like, we believe that knowledge is built by the learner by accessing a lot of different resources and using them in practice.
Cool, thank you so much, Alice. So we've got the next question from Joanna asking what level of spoken and written English is expected to be able to get through the course. She graduated from the UK with a degree in design and is dyslexic. I would say that we've had about 1,800 students over the time that we've been teaching. We've had students who've been dyslexic, so yeah, I mean, I think that we're equipped to help with that. And also the general approach from our coaching team and just, I guess, makers in general will be, if you have any concerns about that, like, I mean, you can always tell us, speak to the course managers when you're applying, and just say, you know, what kind of support you might need. And we'll always have those conversations with you before you join, just to make sure that, you know, everyone's happy, everyone's supported, and that, you know, we've got the right people to help you during the course. Okay, the next question is from Matt asking, are teams given any help with presentation skills? I was very impressed with everyone today. Alice, how does it work?
Yeah, teams are not taught presentation skills. I think you're right to be impressed by their presentations today, but that's to their credit. So there are a few things here. One, most people who do makers have done other types of work before. You know, a lot of people we get are career changers, and that means that they may have done presentations in their previous job. Maybe not everyone in the team, but maybe one or two people in the team have done, you know, client presentation, or I've had to speak in public for a reason or another. So I think it's quite common with makers that they already have some of those skills when they join. What we do is that this is not the first time they present their project. The second team project, they would do a presentation. The first one, actually, for this cohort, they also gave presentations a little bit to each other in their first week team project. And then the second one, they will give a presentation to a coach. And then for final projects, they will have a practice presentation with some feedback. So we do give them a few nudges, but I would say that mostly it's them, really. Now, I don't think that necessarily all of them in the teams will have a lot of practice presenting, but there's often enough that they will help each other out.
Cool, thanks, Alice. I would just add to that as well. Maybe not necessarily for presentations, but in terms of other skills that you'll need when job hunting, as well as obviously having the coaches who teach the technical side of things. We also have a team of career coaches here, and their job is to support the students in all of the different things that you need to do when you start the job hunt. So whether it's things like preparing your CV, or you know, getting used to interview in the tech industry, which might be slightly different from the industry that you've come from. We also have workshops teaching all those kind of skills as well. So there's all sorts of different kind of areas that are prepping you for the career change, as well as the course itself. Cool, so the next question is asking again about if all the cohorts this year will be remote. As Joe mentioned earlier, I think at earliest it will be November, but that's kind of subject to everything, you know, maintaining, being safe to go back, but we'll update you if anything is confirmed on that. Okay, where are we? The next question is asking, how long will it be to learn to code an app or a website? So I guess like maybe how long the course is and any preparation time. I suppose, Alison, if you could tell us a little bit about the course, and maybe Joe, how much prep goes in before starting?
Yeah, it's interesting because when I read this question, I'm thinking, are you starting from, where are you starting? And I guess Joe will talk a little bit about that, about like, what should you start with? But then I'm also thinking, what do you mean by an app and a website? So I'm going to answer about like the curriculum. So the course is 4 weeks of pre-course, which is something that is mostly done remotely. No, sorry, it's always done remotely right now, but is mostly done individually, is what I mean, independently. And then there's the 12 weeks of structured course. And so in week 3 of that structured course, we have a theme that is specifically the web. And during that week, all the makers get to build a website. So that's one way to answer. But then in week 4, they build a website again that has a few more, that can do more things. And then in week 5, they build a website again that has functions in more ways. And then I would say from week 3 and for the rest of the course, devs will be building apps or websites that's become more and more complex up to the final project that you've just seen that are quite complex. So maybe our week 3 is one way to answer, yeah, website is not super specific for me. So in week 3, it's quite basic websites, but that's what you do already, yeah.
And then I suppose, as Alice said there, when you're starting as well, it depends what experience you've had there, whether it's something completely new to you, or whether you've even had a little bit of time looking at resources or whatever. There's 2 resources that we recommend and that are sort of needed to go through before sitting a pairing session interview with us. The first one, I'm sure most of you will have heard of, is Code Academy. Great way to start learning. We recommend Ruby as well for many different reasons. That has a rough, and always take the online resources time estimates as a rough guide. It says about 10 hours, and usually always takes a bit more. That's sort of teaching you the theory and things like that, and then you put it into practice with a second resource called Code Wars, and that's a lot more challenge-based, building that problem-solving skill, and you're working your way through building up momentum, doing all the different challenges on there, and so that's a sort of time period that can vary whether you've had experience or not. It can take anywhere. I think the rough estimate is about 2 to 3 weeks of prep in total before you're sort of ready to go and sit a pairing session with us. There are a few different things that you could do to speed that up that we really recommend as well. We run a workshop series that's run by a different coach every 10 days to 2 weeks called Code Accelerator. And the coaches will go through their sort of learning technique, learning style, and then there'll be a chance to pair program afterwards. And getting some pair programming practice is something that's really important as well to sit that pairing session. And coding with other people, seeing their approach, seeing a new beginner's approach will really help you to grow more quickly to be ready to sit a pairing session with us. So long answer, but about 2 to 3 weeks.
Cool. Thank you both. Also, just a reminder, if you see a question that you do like, you can upvote it, just so we know that we're doing the most important ones first. So our next questions come from Alex, and they're asking, has COVID resulted in a major change in the cohort's ability to find employment after they've completed the course? Thank you. Yes, so naturally there has definitely been an impact on employment. We do still have a selection of hiring partners that are hiring, and people that there's a slow trickle of jobs still coming through. But I think that's it's pretty much the same across all industries at the moment. I suppose one thing to be mindful of is if you're currently at the decision stage of if you'd like to join, you've still got your prep time, and then also the pre-course and the course itself, which is then another 4 months on top of that. So hopefully by that time, obviously we can't make any promises, but hopefully by that time, things will have started to balance out a little bit. But yeah, I mean, if you want to talk to us a little bit more about, hiring or any concerns that you have, you can always contact the course sales team as well, and they can kind of let you know, what's going on in their experience of the course. Okay, next question we've got is from Asia asking, is this course only suited for students who are looking to become a developer? That's interesting. I would say that's how we're best equipped. We have a lot of support in terms of the career side of things. So we have a whole team who are dedicated to helping you find employment as a software developer. And so that's kind of where our skills lie, and we've got a lot of connections with companies who are looking to hire. Alice and Joe, I don't know if you've got any kind of different experience from speaking to the students themselves at all.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because I would say, I mean, we are a course to help you become a developer. Like that's the course. So I guess if you're looking to become something that is not a developer, depending on how far from a developer you'd like to be, I mean, I'm sure the course could help in some ways, but it's not what it was built for, I guess. And so now I obviously this means that I need to imagine what you're putting behind that question, right? Like if what you want to become is a founder of a startup who has some technical ability, then sure. But I think like the course will help you become a developer. The course will make you a developer. That's what I think. Now, will those developer skills help you in other ways? Sure, but you're not getting, what you're getting out of the course is becoming a developer. That's basically it.
On the sort of job side of things, and I can completely agree, and we have seen people go into, I suppose, slight variations of a developer. Maybe they want something a bit more client facing, so they go into a more product role. Maybe they've really enjoyed working on data throughout the course or throughout their own projects, so they sort of specialize into that sort of route. But the core thing has that software engineering sort of backbone to it. But yeah, slight, I suppose, variations of that do occur.
Yeah, I would agree. Cool, thanks. So Joanna is asking, how intensive is the course really? Is it manageable alongside a part-time job? Do you have to be available at a particular time of day? Or is it flexible around, and is it flexible from like one day to another? Thank you. Alice, could you?
Yeah, I can answer that. It is not the full-time course is not, I would say, manageable alongside a part-time job. I mean, I guess if your part-time job is 2 hours a week, then maybe, sure. But any more than that, I would say like the full-time course is very much full-time. And it's not just full-time, like, because it's really intense learning, you're gonna you're going to probably be quite tired at the start because you're gathering all that information in your brain. You're going to need to really process, and you're going to need to find time to rest. And I would really not want any learner to be in a situation where they can't have that rest because they have to work on something else. I think that's not going to help you on the course. A slight add to that is that, first of all, the pre-course, which is the first 4 weeks, I think that is definitely manageable alongside a part-time job. And usually this is kind of a period that people use to transition into the course. So often they wrap up their job, they give their notice, and then they are not in a job anymore for the full-time course. So the first 4 weeks of pre-course, yes, but then the full-time course, I would really very, very strongly discourage that. However, I think we may have a part-time course happening, but I'm not the one who's managing that, so I don't want to say anything wrong.
So a little on that part-time course. It starts on Monday, so it's a pilot that we're running. Which the 3 months of the full-time training is stretched over 6 months. So with that pre-course, it's then 7 months, and does give a chance to work alongside it. But as I said, it's a pilot. So at the moment, we're just going to see how it goes, take a load of learnings from it, and then potentially make it a bit more concrete. That cohort graduates in about February time, so it would be potentially then, not sure, as Alice said, I don't want to say anything wrong, but potentially then when we may think about setting something out more concrete.
Cool, thank you both. There was a couple of questions within that question, so I just wanted to ask a few of those as well. They're also asking about if you need to be available at a certain time of day. Could you maybe let us know a little bit about kind of the structure of a day, maybe at the start of the course, and then how it changes at the end of the course?
For sure. So pre-course, as I'd say, it's kind of independent. You work on your own, so there's no real time you need to be available. You just need to work through all the material. But as soon as the full-time course starts, there are check-ins every morning at 9:30. So you would definitely, that's when the day starts, basically. Some people like to start earlier, but the actual Maker's Day, I would say, starts at 9:30. You would check in with members of your cohort. And then after that, on a Monday, you would have a kickoff for the week with a coach who would present the theme for the week. Any other day of the week, you would sometimes have a workshop, or sometimes have some self-led learning time where you would work on a practical, so an exercise, either on your own or with a pair. And that's a little bit of time for you to manage your own learning and to consolidate the things that you've learned in the last few days. And then at 1:30 every day, Dana, our Chief Joy Officer, is doing facilitating meditation. So there's a 10-minute meditation every day at 12:30. And then, sorry, not at 12:30, at 1:30. And then after that, usually from about 2 p.m., people will get into pairs. So every day you would be paired with a different person, and you would work on a set of challenges throughout the afternoon, often until about 5 p.m., sometimes later, depending on how you're doing with your pair. So that's for the structure. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, there's also yoga from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. So that's also part of the structure of the day. Now, this structure is valid for about the first 5 weeks of the full-time course. I would say that later in the course, you're mostly doing teamwork. And in teamwork, you still would check in with your cohort at 9:30 and with your team, so you would still start the day at about the same time. But then how you organize your day is often done to your team. So a lot of teams like to see each other at the start of the day, and then just before lunch, and then just after lunch to start their afternoon, and then have some time to reflect together by 5 p.m. And mostly teams would be pairing. So on team work weeks, you would be in touch with someone from your team probably throughout the day. So that's kind of the structure. Yeah, that's pretty much the structure. Oh, something else I didn't mention, which is useful to know, is that every Friday we set out a challenge to be completed over the weekend. No, I say completed, to be worked on over the weekend. And that's something that is useful to work on to validate your own learning. Some people choose to do it a little bit earlier, so they will work on it during the day on Friday, and that's always a possibility if you don't have a lot of time on the weekend. But there's still work even over the weekend, and I'm sure and a lot of students find it really useful to do that weekend challenge on their own during the weekend, just to help them validate that the week was kind of taken in. Yeah.
Cool, that's great. Thank you, Alice. So I've got a couple more questions coming through. So the next one is, I'm self-employed. Am I able to pay for the course via my business? Yes, as far as I'm aware, that should be fine. Again, if you've got questions about payment, you can always email us when you're applying, just so we can make sure we've got the right information for you. Nick is asking, could you share a little more information about the job search phase after graduation? Yeah, no problem. So when it comes to job hunting, like I say, at the towards the end of the course, you'll begin to have workshops around kind of upskilling for the job hunting process, and you'll need to fill out a profile about you know, your kind of previous experience and the type of roles that you're looking for. When we were on site, how we used to do it was that we would then have a careers fair where the companies would come in. I believe they were once a month, and the way that would work is that the company has a 5-minute pitch to tell you about the type of role that it is, your expectations, a little bit about the culture, and then afterwards there's a networking section. The way that that's changed during this kind of period where we're remote is that anytime that a company is ready to pitch, rather than waiting for the full month, I believe we'll just try to book it in as soon as the company is available to do it. Obviously, just so the process is quicker, no one wants to be waiting longer than they need to at the moment. So, and those are all done remotely. It's still the exact same way, and you've got the chance to ask them your questions. Joe actually used to work on that side of things. Is there anything kind of extra that you would want to share about that side of things?
Yeah, as Haley said, I used to work on the partnerships team here for just under 2 years. We would often sort of get to know your maybe preferences. Maybe you want to work outside of London. Maybe you're after a fintech role or something like that. So that when we're having those conversations with companies and with our hiring partners, we've sort of got an image of what our job hunting pool looks like. So we're able to sort of know and point people in the right direction. The career support coaches are massively valuable. You're able to still book in reviews, see how your coding is going. It's really important to sort of split your time between coding and the job search. Employers, if you're sort of splitting your time sort of 60-40 on job hunt and coding, still building projects, going back through those weekend challenges that Alice mentioned. Maybe you didn't finish them during the course. Maybe you want to write them in a new language. Doing these things is still massively important, so that when you come to those phone call stages, in-person interviews, you have all these things. You've learned them in the boot camp, but you've also taken them to the next level. Doing all those things will help you to be hired more quickly. about 30% of people get 40% of people get hired through our hiring partners. There's no sort of contract involved. It's more just having the roles available to you. And then the other sort of 60-70% get hired through jobs that they found themselves, or through sort of job boards that you're being shown by the career support team. And they're going to be there for daily stand-ups if that works for you, weekly check-ins. It's very sort of, you can dip in and out as much as you'd like, but it's all sort of there, that support for you.
Yeah, there are a few more. There's one more thing that we do currently, where there's one more thing that maybe you didn't mention, which is that the technical coaches are always available, and we're really happy to help people plan out how they could learn one skill, or how they could work on a project or another, how they can get unblocked in their learning, and we've explored like kind of helping devs do their own group projects together and organize themselves in doing group projects. So there's always like there's always support that is available, and I think as with makers, the more you reach out, the more support you would get.
Cool, thanks. If I have time to find it before the end of this call, we've got a couple of really great resources about that go a little bit more in depth about the job hunting process, and also some of the outcomes of our alumni. So if I'm able to find them before the end of this call, I'll drop them in the chat. I really recommend you having a look at those. So next question is from Ollie. This is for you, Joe. Just to clarify, when you say November is the earliest possible on-site cohort, do you mean that's the pre-course or the start date of the actual course?
Yeah, thanks, Ollie. Definitely want to be clear on it. The pre-course is always done remotely, even if we were on site. Something that's done in your kind of own time, as we've mentioned before. We used to, when we had the on-site, it would be sort of 3 cohorts in the office at the same time, and we also have the apprenticeship cohorts to sort of consider as well. And especially during this time, and I imagine for a while, we won't be able to do that. So that's going to need a whole lot of sort of rethinking. But the sort of rough talks that we've been having for some sort of maybe rotational cohorts in an office environment around November time. When it comes to deciding between remote and whether you want remote or whether you want to do it on site, I would try and challenge your thinking a little bit on there, depending on what that is. So we've been running a remote cohort for some variation of the remote cohort for about the last 5 years. So we're very confident on our ability on it, and you would have seen from the presentations that people still end with being able to make some fantastic things. If you are able to have a good working from home environment, then there's almost no better time, but it really does depend on your working from home environment and how you can do that. But coming to some of the events we run, coming to one of these, seeing what people can achieve at the end of their remote training, and also coming to the Code Accelerator events, getting a little taste of what it's like to learn remotely, work with people remotely, that'll help you decide. Maybe you'll think, yeah, maybe I can do this, or maybe you'll go, no, definitely not, I want to wait. But doing that extra bit and seeing it for yourself can really help.
Well, that's great, thank you, Joe. I've found a few resources that I was trying to, so I'll drop those in the chat in just a moment. I think also the only thing I'd add to what Joe's just said is, as we mentioned before, just in case anyone new has kind of dropped in or out of the call, the November date is still provisional. So, you know, just keep an eye on any announcements to see if we will actually be going on site then. Lovely, so the next question is asking, I understand there's a full-time course and a part-time pilot. Do we anticipate apprenticeships to be reopening soon, and how does it work? we don't have anyone from the apprenticeship team. Joe, do you have any information on that at all?
Yeah, so the apprenticeship is very similar, but it's mostly the process that's different. And some of that process is the sort of applying and admissions. You'd need to apply to us and then pass our sort of entry criteria, and then you enter our apprenticeship candidate pool of people. We run a cohort every 3 months on the apprenticeship side of things, and we hand roles to those that apprenticeship pool. At the moment, that apprenticeship pool is full of candidates, and so that number will only go down when we run the next cohort. The next cohort is being run at late July, so that number will likely in the pool will likely go down, and there may be a chance that we reopen applications for people to be able to enter that pool. So it may be then, or we may decide to open it after the next cohort, apprenticeship cohort, which would be in September. And then when it comes to applying for jobs in that apprenticeship pool, as I said, there'll be roles that will be sent to you and advertised to you, and then you'll need to go through that company's admissions process as well before then starting the training with us.
Cool, that's great, thanks Joe. So we've got the last two, and then I think we'll wrap up there. So if you've got any burning questions, please, you might be able to sneak it in now. But Joanna is asking, what's the starting dates for the new courses for the next 6 months or so? So the best place to find the up-to-date version of those, if you go to the Maker's website, click apply, and then on the first page of the application, it will list all of the available cohorts, I think, for the next 3 months. We don't tend to list them too far beyond that. The reason for that is just because we don't like you to apply too far ahead of time, just to make sure, you know, you're keeping up your momentum, and you know, in 6 months' time, you've not kind of had time to practice in the meantime or anything. So yeah, hopefully 3 months gives people a decent amount of flexibility and time to, you know, sort out finishing your job and that kind of thing. Okay. The last question is from Kazi, and they're asking, what if someone doesn't have any experience of working in this field in the past? How hard would it be to land a job after finishing the bootcamp? I understand it depends on the person, availability of jobs, etc. It'd be great to hear both of your thoughts on this. Alice, what would you say? Oh, sorry, you're muted, Alice.
Sorry. Doesn't have any experiences of working in this field. So I want to say something about this, which is this concept of false beginners. We often have people who join the cohort who seem to be progressing faster for a reason or another. And often when you dig a little bit is that they have maybe done something similar to this. Maybe they've done a little bit of coding, or maybe they are really comfortable with computers. They have not done coding, but they've done IT support, for example, and they're really comfortable with Googling up a solution and you know, following instructions. Or maybe they've done a lot of problem solving in a different domain, and those skills transfer. So the first thing is, like, I don't think that experience in tech or coding specifically necessarily translates. There are a lot of skills that could translate into this. Now, there are also some people who have very little things that really translate, very little experience that really translates to coding. And I think those people sometimes will maybe spend a bit more time during the pre-course to really take everything in. And that's really why we have a pre-course that is kind of listed as part-time. I think it's almost a bit of a leveling field for people with more experience and people with less experience to all come together with the same amount of fundamentals and basics for the start of the full-time course. So I think it's still possible for someone who has never learned coding to go through this whole process and get a job. However, I would very much you need to start and discover a little bit of coding before you go for the interview, right? And then you need to keep being curious about it. And I think another thing that is really important is that the main learning obstacles I've seen is emotional. Like the main reason why people may be slowed down in their learning is often that they feel that they're too slow in their learning. So a lot of self-doubt and a lot of stress can make it quite difficult to learn. And I think someone with zero experience of coding, but a really open attitude of, it doesn't matter, I don't know anything, but I'm just going to learn, I'm just going to take it one step at a time, and I'm being positive, can achieve really, really good results. So I think it's a combination of some experience obviously may help, but your mindset going into it is going to be it's going to make the biggest difference.
Absolutely, completely agree with that. And we do, the coaches on the career support side will do a lot of work for whatever field you've come in from, and trying to see what skills can you pick up from that are going to make you an amazing developer. And some hiring partners love the fact that we have such a diverse group of people. We honestly have people from all backgrounds of careers, and there's always a skill that you can pick up from them. I had a hiring partner and showed them around the office, and we spoke to a stonemason, and then they were thinking of all the skills that stonemason would have taken from his previous role into his now new role as a developer, which I think was really cool.
Thanks. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think you're totally right, Joe. The kind of different career paths we've had at Makers, and we've got a couple of different case studies on our website, but I think people come to hire from us because we work with career changers. They're not necessarily looking for people who have just done a computer science role. And if you've got years of management experience, then great, you might be like a really good team player, or there's all sorts of things. So yeah, it's definitely something that we're used to if you've not come from a tech background. And yeah, and even people who have done computer science degrees and things like that before have sometimes come to us to learn a different skill set. So yeah, I definitely don't think it'd be something that would disadvantage you. Okay, we're on to our last one, and I'm hoping you can help with this, Joe. They're asking, do you have partners selecting their apprentices before us? And as in, do they send us a short list of candidates who they'd like to work with?
Yeah, it sometimes happens. There's two ways that sometimes happens. We sometimes do employee internal retraining. So we might reach out to a company, and then they might do a campaign internally to all their employees, see who wants to retrain as a developer. We've got an amazing case study where we did this with Vodafone and their customer services team. We also sometimes work with companies that want to do an external attraction. So they'll put adverts on their pages, put adverts out on Google, on LinkedIn and things, to try and get a big pool of people. And then we'll kind of pair up on the interview and admission side of things. But you will have sort of had that before applying. But whatever happens on the apprenticeship, you are hired before you take the training. So there's that sort of, if you don't mind maybe waiting a little bit longer, if you're ready to go, the boot camp is like fantastic. But if you don't mind waiting that little bit longer, you could only start the training when you've got hired, which can be quite nice and risk-free, I suppose.
Cool, Thank you so much. So that brings us to the end of our questions. So thank you, Alice and Joe, for all of your help today. I've dropped a few of those resources about the career side of things in the chat. So if you are interested in those, click on those now so that they don't disappear when you leave the call. Final thing I would say is we run a whole bunch of different events at Makers. Joe mentioned the Code Accelerator workshop, where you can practice your coding with a group of other new coders and with some of our coaches. We also do a Q&A event where you can meet our alumni. They're really, really great to talk to get the perspective of people who have been there and done that. So there's one coming up in just over a week if you'd like to come along to that. And yeah, you can contact us at any point as well if you've got any questions in the meantime. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining, and we will hopefully see you soon. Right, bye.
Bye everyone.
Bye, thank you.